Hi everyone and welcome back to this tutorial series on creating C++ plugins for Cinema 4D. So we're just going to jump right into it now, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new plugin for R21. Well, actually this plugin that we're going to be creating, you could use it in R20 all the way up to R23. I'm going to be developing in for R21 using 2017 as shown in my Getting Started guide. Now, first thing we're going to do is go to our C code directory that we created in the previous tutorial. Go into the SDK directory, go into the plugins folder, and I'm going to create a new one called I'll just call it first plugin. And this is just the name that we want to give this. And inside of that, we're going to create another folder called project. Now I'm going to go back up to a folder there to plugins, and I'm going to go into this Cinema 4D SDK folder and go into the project folder, and then copy this project definition.txt. And I'm going to paste that into the project folder. What this is used for is it's used by the project tool to describe to the project tool what should be built, what the solutions are, and what kind of files are going to be included in the plugin. Now there's lots more information on this, and you can find that on the documentation. But I'm just going to ignore that right now. If you just follow these steps, we'll get you compiling your very first plugin. Now next to that project tool, project file folder, I'm going to create one called source. And I'm actually going to open up that project definition file. I'm going to rename this down here to something unique that's going to be uniquely identify this plugin to Cinema 4D anywhere in the world, no matter how many other projects, how many other plugins any people may have installed in Cinema 4D. This needs to be unique. And you can see here the way that Maxhive set it up is they've kind of used a reverse URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to call this com.plugins4d, and I'm going to call this tutorial. Let's actually maybe getting started. I'm trying to come up with a good name. Intro tutorials. There we go. And then I'm going to give it the name first plugin. Okay, that's a good name. So now this is going to be uniquely identifying this plugin. So if I happen to do more plugins using this intro tutorial series, then I would just change this last piece of text here so that it uniquely identifies it. So no one else would really be using my domain name to identify this plugin. And if we just look up at some of this other stuff here, the only other thing of interest right now to people would be that it's developing for OS X and Windows. So it's when you run the project tool, it's going to create project files for Windows and OS X. Now that's all we need to know about this. We just need to make sure that we put this module ID in there so that it kind of identifies it. So I'm just going to close that down now and come back to the source folder. I'm going to right click and go new text document, and I'm going to call this main.cpp and click yes. So this is going to be the first file that's going to be included in our project. I'm just going to leave that empty right now. And what I'm going to do now is go to the SDK folder, the code folder. And in the first tutorial series, I created this build SDK.bat file. If I just edit that, just to refresh our memories, all that's doing is it's running the project tool contained in this folder here against this C code SDK folder. So let me just run that now. I'm just going to close it down. Now I just need to double click this, and it runs the project tool. And you'll see that it's picked up my my plugin there, and it's created project files for Visual Studio and also for Xcode. But there's one thing I forgot to do on here as well. So I just need to close that down. And I also need to come into the SDK folder, go into the plugins folder, go into the project folder. Now this is SDK plugins project. And I need to edit this project definition. So this is the project definition which tells the project tool what plugins should be used in the actual solution that we'll be opening in a second. And I'm referring to this solution file here. So I need to add our new one here. So I'm just going to put a semicolon there, a new line, plugins / first plugin. Okay, so that's referring to this one here. So we've given it the path to that. So now it knows to include that in the solution. So I'm just going to save that as well. And then go back to the code directory. And I'm going to run that batch file again. And you'll see now it's also updated the plugins solution here. Now the other ones weren't rebuilt because it only rebuilds them if it needs to. So you can run the solution, run this batch file as many times as you want, and it won't keep recreating it, which is nice if you're checking your code into GitHub. Instead, it will just only update it if it needs to. So now that we've run the project tool over our SDK, we can come back into that plugins folder, go into first plugin, go into project, and now you're going to see those files that were created. So there's the Visual Studio files right there. These ones were all used by Visual Studio. And then there's the Xcode ones as well. We don't need to worry about using these at all. All we're going to do is open up the full solution, which is under SDK, plugins, project. And we're going to open up this one here. And I'll be opening this in Visual Studio 2017. If you're developing for S22 or R23, you will be using 2019 to do this. And again, if you are unsure about any of this, just follow my very first tutorial, Getting Started with Windows 10, and it will describe all of this in more detail. Now I'm going to uncheck this because I'm trusting all the projects that we're loading in. Click OK, because that loads in all of the frameworks. These are the frameworks, and these are the plugins. Now we're not really going to be using these last two here, and I could actually remove them from that project definition file that we're mentioning before. See how they are included here. So I could remove them if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave them in for now, but I may remove them in a future tutorial. Just to remove them from my space, because I'm just not going to be using them. But this one here is very useful because it contains lots of code examples that we can look at. And so the first thing we might actually want to look at is main.cpp. We can see that there. But let me just show you first the first plugin, because this is our new plugin that we're building. Under first plugin, source, you'll see our main.cpp for our new plugin. I'm just going to open that by double clicking. And now what I'm going to do is I could copy this from here, but I'm actually going to see if there's a cut down version of this file for from the documentation itself. So I'm going to open up the documentation here and go to developers.maxon.net. And I'm going to click on this online docs for C++. And developing for Microsoft Windows. Or maybe, no, plugin development, I believe is where we want to go. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in here plugin start. And just have a look here. If you come to plugin functions manual, one of these ones at the top, this is kind of the instructions that will live inside of the main.cpp file. And I was looking through here to try and see if there was something that kind of contained everything that I wanted in a nice example, but it doesn't appear to be. But keep this page in mind. So you can just go to, you can click on Open Search when you're on here, and from there you can type in plugin start and then the plugin functions manual. Okay, because what I'm going to be doing now is copying information from the example project into our new one and just deleting things. But if you want to know what any of these things actually are, if you're curious, you can come through and look at this in more detail and read through this information here. But I'm not going to go over it right now. Instead, I'm just going to come in here And again, this is the this is the main file from Cinema 4D SDK source main. This one here. Selecting everything, clicking copy, coming across to main.cpp, and just pasting it all in. Okay, I'm going to close down that one, and now I'm just going to clean this file up. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, and you can even see at the top the basics of what you need. You can see there, this is all you actually need. It's got plugin start, register or do something, plugin end, and plugin message. And if we scroll down and have a look, you'll see that information is there as well. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to use this bit as it says right there. So I'm just going to select this bit at the top. I'm going to copy it. Okay, I'm just going to select everything and delete it and paste that back in. So again, I've just taken the top part of that file. And now I'm just going to uncomment it by clicking this uncomment button up here. And I'm just going to delete the text from the top. I'm also going to delete this piece of text here. And this is the bare minimum for a plugin. Just going to save that. Now, if I was to build this by going up to build and selecting build solution, you see that it builds the plugin. And if we just have a look inside of our C code SDK folder, plugins, first plugin, you see this first plugin.xdl64. So that is the first plugin built for Cinema 4D, but at the moment it's not doing anything. So now we have this main.cpp file, and the plugin is compiling. If we were to compile it, again we can see that it's compiling, but there's nothing in here at the moment. It doesn't actually do anything. So what we want to do is add what's called a command to this to make it do something. And what we're going to make it do is when you click run this command, it's going to add a cube to the scene. And these can be run from the menu, or they can be called from like docking an icon to your UI. Now what I'm going to do next is just kind of write verbatim basically what it is that you need to do. You don't need to understand anything that I'm doing. You can just follow along and learn as you go. So I'm not going to explain any technical C++ terminology or anything at all. I'm just going to show you what to do and let you get into it first before getting bogged down with anything. So just need to type class, and then we're going to give our class a name, which is basically our command a name. I'm going to call it first plugin command. Now I could have called that create cube, and then colon, and command data. That's the type of plugin for Cinema 4D that we're going to be making. And open bracket and close curly bracket, and then a semicolon at the end of it. Now you need to type in the word public, followed by colon, and now we're going to add the execute method. Now the easiest way to get to that is to right click on command data. But before I do, I need to just type the word public before that as well. So that's what you should have right now in your file. Now if you right click on command data, then go to definition here, F12, you could press F12, just click on go to definition. And this will take you to the file within the SDK here, in the framework, for this command plugin. So confusingly enough, these are called plugins that we're going to be adding. We're adding a plugin to our plugin. And what we want to grab from here is this piece of text right here, this execute method. So you just need to select that and copy it, go back to your main, and just paste it after the public line. And then I'm going to go open bracket, close bracket again, and a semicolon. And what happens when you click your button in the interface is this is going to be called, and it's going to run whatever we put in here. So now the first thing I want to do, because I want to add a cube to the scene, is I want to just ensure that this cube can be undoable. So if you click undo redo, then that's handled as well. So to do that, we need to start the undo system inside our document. This here, base document, is our document. The document is what you have open in Cinema 4D that you're working with. It's the scene that you're seeing. So I'm just going to say doc, start undo, and I'm also going to, straight after that, I'm going to go doc, end undo. And in between here, what we're going to do is add a cube. So I'm going to now create a new cube object. I'm going to go base object, cube, and I just put a P there in front of it because I'm kind of old school the way I program, I guess. And it just says that what I'm dealing with here is a pointer. Now I'm not going to worry about that, but this could just be called cube if you wanted. But this is my style. And I'm going to say base object, colon, alloc, and then O, capital O, and then lowercase cube. And you'll see it appearing in the IntelliSense there. So this here is going to create an actual cube object in Cinema 4D. But now we need to add it to the document. So I'm going to go doc, insert object, and I'm going to pcube. And for the rest of these things, I'm going to type null pointer, and that's all. This just basically means pass in nothing to the next parameter of this function. So this here is a function of the document, and we're just telling that function to take this cube that we've just created, this is the cube, and give it to the document. So now the document owns that cube and is going to look after it, and it's going to appear in our scene. And just to make sure the undo works, we're just going to say doc, add undo. If we press, when you're typing this into into Visual Studio, you see the IntelliSense appears when you type the arrow there. And if you start typing, such as add undo, it'll filter it, so you'll be able to select that there. And now if I do an open bracket, you'll see this has two options there. Now you can either click these little arrows to find these options, or you can click the just up and down arrows on your keyboard, and that will also go through them. That just helps you find out what you should be passing into these functions. Okay, so I don't want this one here, which says base draw. I'm looking for this one, which says undo type. So I'm just going to press return. I'll press escape, actually, because I can just look at this and see what it is that I want to do. And you'll notice here that it's actually got text in there that describes. So let me just kind of show you that again. So I've opened the bracket, and now it's giving me the options. I'm clicking down, and you can see the documentation on what this is. And this is actually kind of some of the documentation that I might want. So in a lot of cases in the documentation in Cinema 4D, you can grab a lot from the documentation itself. And this is kind of what I want here. Now I could type this in manually right now, but I just want to show you how you can discover some of this stuff as well. So because I've seen this here, I can right click on add undo and go to definition. And down here in the bottom, it's found it in two places, because there was two methods, remember? There was one with base draw and one with undo type. I want that undo type one, so I'm just going to double click on that. It's going to take me to this information. And this isn't actually where I want to be, so I'm going to right click on that and go to declaration. Okay, and now I'm in the file, the header file. It's called a header file, which is a .h file if you look at this. So let me just take you through that again, just kind of as the way to navigate these files a little bit. Might be a little bit confusing. I'm going to close that down again, that document. So I'm in here. I've typed add undo. I know it contains two methods. I click away to close that. I'm going to right click on add undo, and I'm going to go to definition, and you'll see the two definitions down here. I'm going to right click on that, double click on the first one, and then I'm going to right click on that and go to declaration. And this is the documentation that we were seeing when we were clicking the up and down arrows. Now I'm just going to drag this and just copy this. So that was a little bit long-winded, but it just shows you how you can get to some of this information, because everything in the SDK is fully documented and you can read it in what's called these header files, which are .h. I'm going to go back to my main.cpp file. Now I'm just going to paste that line in, but I'm not adding a new tag. The thing I'm adding is a cube. So I'm just going to pass this cube right into here. So what this is saying to Cinema 4D is we need to add an undo event, which is of type new object, which is just a new thing that you're adding to the document, and you pass in what the thing was that you created, which is our cube in this instance. And this is it. We're done now. Our function is complete. The next thing we need to do is register this function with Cinema 4D. So to register a function with Cinema 4D, let's just come up to the help. And again, to get to that help, you come to developers.maxon.net, click on that button there, and we go to plugin types. I'm going to come down here to command data. And this one here is what we're going to be doing right now, which is register command plugin. So I'm going to click on that. And it takes you to this command, what it's all about. And what it needs, one of the important things that it needs is an ID number. Now this is unique across every plugin that's ever in Cinema 4D anywhere. It includes all the menu items, all the things you click on, all the tags, all the objects, everything. And you get those from a place called Plugin Cafe. So there's a link there, so you can click on that. And funnily enough, it takes you back here, okay? Because Plugin Cafe is actually linked to, actually I think I just needed to have HTTPS. I think that documentation needs to be changed. But you can get to it from here as well. You just go to support forum and go search the forum. And the forum is Plugin Cafe. And again, if you want to come here straight away, let's just copy that just to verify that this works. HTTPS. And it will come straight there. So you can bookmark that and you'll come here. You'll need to register to be able to get to where we want to go next. So just if you haven't done that before, click register there and then enter in your information and you'll be a user of the Plugin Cafe. So I'm just going to log in. So this is me. I'm logged in here. This is everything that I've ever talked on in this cafe. Now I've been here for many, many years. Now the place you need to click on next to get this ID for your plugin is this little thing right up here called Plugin ID. And that's going to take you to this page here. Now what we want to do now is add in the new ID for our plugin. So I'm just going to call it first plugin. I'll call it intro at the beginning actually, just so I know what it is. Now this text is not used by anywhere. This is only used for yourself so you can identify it yourself when you look through your list. And I'm going to click get plugin ID. You can see here it's added plugin ID. That's my plugin right there. And this is my ID. This is what I need. Okay, so just copy that number right there. Don't copy my number. Copy the number that you created when you just clicked get plugin ID. So now jump back into Visual Studio. And I'm just going to paste that up the top here. And before I'm going to go hash define intro, actually first plugin. Bear with me with my typing command. This is what this hash define does is it tells C++ that wherever it sees this in the code, just replace it with this. So I could be using this directly and put it everywhere, but it's much nicer to kind of give it a text identifier and then you can paste that wherever you need it to go instead of putting this number everywhere. More human readable. So now we need to register the command. That's what we need right there. I'm just going to click back to go back to this page. I'm going to click on register command again. because I don't really want to kind of copy this. So what I'm going to do is copy the command, register command plugin. Again, I'm doing this to make it easier to try and figure out where to find things. So there I just went Control, Shift, and F. Again, it's the same as going Edit, Edit, Find and Replace, Control, Shift, F. Just find in all the files, Control, Shift, F. And I'm pasting in register command data and just clicking Find All. So it's going to find where that's been used within Cinema 4D. And I'm just going to scroll down to one of these, reverse normals command. And I'm just going to copy this whole block right here. Okay, so just copy that whole part there. Now, this file, if you're interested, is in the Cinema 4D SDK source tools, Cinema 4D SDK source tool. So I'm just inside this file right here. Now, I'm only doing this just so it saves me from typing, so I can, be pretty lazy. I can just copy and paste bits from here and there instead of having to remember. And I'm just going back to my main. And right after that class, I'm pasting that in, okay? But I'm just going to rename it to register first plugin command. And this is just what's called a function. And this function is, when we call this function, it's going to call whatever's inside of it, which is going to be this. What return means is it will just give back whatever this function here gives back. Now this one here, register command plugin, is the Cinema 4D function to add this to its system, so it knows that it's actually a command, and allows users to call it. So I'm just going to change this here to our define GE load string. I'm not going to get into that. Instead, I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to type in my first command. And at the end of this, I'm going to do an underscore S. This is just to identify to Cinema 4D that this here inside of these quotes is a piece of text that it should deal with. And at the end here, we've got new object clear. We don't want the reverse normals command. We want this one. Double click that, copy first plugin command, and paste it in there. And if there's no little red squiggles under anything, then you know you've done everything correctly. Now I'm just going to copy this here, register first plugin command, and come down into the plugin start. And when our plugin gets loaded by Cinema 4D, which happens when you start Cinema 4D, we want to register this command, our creating the cube, and tell Cinema 4D what its ID is, so that it knows how to use it and where to find it. So I'm just going to paste this right here, open bracket, close bracket, and then I'm just going to tab that out just to make it look nicer. And this is pretty much it. This is our plugin. Our plugin's ready to go. And one thing that you can kind of do as well is if you can check that this returned successfully, because if it doesn't, then something might have gone wrong and your plugin shouldn't probably load. But if you just go if not, that's what the exclamation point means, not, register first command data, return false. I'm just going to put a return after that so we can see it. So all this is doing here, when the plugin starts up, it's going to call this, which comes in here, which calls the Cinema 4D version. And it says, I'm going to try and, I want to register this plugin that I've got. Here's my ID. Again, this is going to be replaced by this number up here. It's going to be called this in the UI. And then this passes in the command itself that it's trying to register. And if that's successful, then it will return a value of true, which means yes, it's okay. You can add this to Cinema 4D, and it'll come down here. It'll skip over this. And a way to actually identify that is to put brackets around this. It makes it easier to talk about. So if it's true, then it's going to jump right over this and call that. But if this comes back false, which is like no, then it's going to run the little bit of code that's inside of here, which in turn will return false, which again is saying no, this plugin, I couldn't add this to Cinema 4D. Sorry, just stop, just go away. Now, the instance that this might occur is as if someone else happens to have used that same number. That's why it's very important to get your own number from C4D Cafe. Because if you put in a number and it clashes with someone else, then this plugin is not going to get registered. It's going to return no. That's going to return false there. We're going to say no, and then by returning no there, it means that this whole plugin will not load, which is kind of a safety net, because when your plugin loads, you want to make sure that everything that you're adding actually gets added, because in your own code you might be referring to lots of different things in your own stuff. So I'm getting ahead of myself there. If you got that, okay. If you didn't, just ignore it for now. What I want to do now is just build this. So I'm going to go build solution. And it's actually going to come back with an error because I've forgotten one vital thing. And the error down here, you see, first plugin command execute must return a value, because this also has a bool or a yes no. And so when we get down to here, we should return true, and it's saying that this function executed properly. We're all good to go. One other thing you may notice down here is a bunch of things popping up at the front. You can safely ignore all that, and the way to do that and get rid of it is just to come up to here and just change this to build only. Now you're only going to see the stuff relating to building the plugin and not any kind of internal IntelliSense stuff, which you don't need to worry about. I'm just going to build that again. Control-Shift-B, which is there, Control-Shift-B. It's building the plugin, and the plugin has been built. Now let's check that that plugin actually works. Let's open Cinema 4D. Now, if you followed the first tutorial, you would have seen that I added in the search path to our SDK, our code SDK folder to Cinema 4D. So I added this path to our search path. So now Cinema 4D, as it's loading up, it's loading all the plugins within this folder, which includes our first plugin. So if I come up under extensions, you'll see down here my first command, because by default it's going to add any new plugins that you create, which are commands at least, to this extensions menu. So if I click this, it should make a cube. And interestingly enough, there's an example which does what we're doing as well, called make a cube. So my first command, and there's the cube. Now what happened there was it didn't update in the viewport. If I click undo and redo, it's now doing kind of what it's meant to do, because I forgot to do something in that command. So I'm going to close this down. And the one thing I forgot to do was at the very end, because we've kind of added something, we should call event add, and that will signify to Cinema 4D that something has changed and that it should kind of do a refresh. So let's do a build again. Control-Shift-B. And now I'm going to open up Cinema 4D again here. Now, for those of you who've done a little bit of C++ before, you may be thinking, why isn't he debugging it? I'm not going to go into debugging in this tutorial. I'll do that in a future tutorial. Now, under extensions, my first cube. Now you see the cube straight away. I can click undo, redo, and it's working as normal. I can do it again. Second cube, undo, undo, redo, redo. And if I want, I can right click, I can go customize palettes, I can type my first command, I can drag that up here, close that, and now if I delete, I can click that to add as many cubes as I want to my scene. And the undo, redo is all working. So that's your first plugin. It doesn't do a hell of a lot right now, but this is the basics of it for getting something in Cinema 4D and having it interact with Cinema 4D itself.